Right. Hang on. Everything's stopped now. I've not got a cursor. No, I don't want to do that. Who loves the hybrid world? Hands up. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to focus on this room. I know there are people on Zoom, but I'm no good at providing my attention. But when we get to the end of what I'm going to say, we'll open it up and then we can see each other, those of you on Zoom and those of you in the room. I'm now just trusting that people can still see me on Zoom. So first of all, if you don't know who I am, stick your hand up. Right, Oshin, get out. So, I don't know your name. Well, what are you doing, Rob? Have you done it for your second year, first year? Just welcome, welcome. So I'm Matt Jones, and I'm one of the research team in the Computational Foundry. I've been in Swansea now for 16 years. It's been, so to encourage you, it's a really nice place to do the research, and time flies very quickly. The purpose of these sessions are, first of all, they're very informal. I can see, I think it's logged on here. There's some feedback. Yeah, that was me. That was Thomas. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So as you can see, that was deliberate. It's very informal. And it's a chance for researchers from across the computational foundry and beyond to just come and say something about what they do, rather than, I'm hoping, you're not expecting, an in-depth talk about a particular research thing. So I'm going to be brief, I hope. I'm going to perhaps give you some things to think about, and then mainly there'll be a time for us to all talk and think about the issues I've raised. The series, which is run by Heidi, there, and with help of Ellie, and it's been going now, Heidi, for how long?
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. It's been really successful, all sorts of people, and I think people find it really helpful. I hope I'm not going to ruin it today. So my title is My Research and Why It Doesn't Matter, which seems a little bit contrarian, given that the title of the entire 3-year series has been My Research, Why It Matters. What I want to do is to tell you why that title, I'm sorry, Heidi, has always kind of made me pause and worry a little bit, just from my perspective. And the first reason is I don't really like the word my. Because in my experience, research has been a massively collaborative endeavor. And that's true, actually, even when I was doing a PhD. When I started at uni, well, yeah, I had my supervisor. I might have had I did have a second supervisor. I was based in a lab, a little like the labs we've got here in the Foundry. And we all felt that we were doing whatever we were doing together. So my, for me, is a bit jarring. So 2 things researchers like to think about when they're trying to think, are they doing anything of value? One is outputs, yeah, publications. Here is a little snapshot of my Google Scholar page, and you will all probably have one of those, or you will soon have one. Every single one of my publications, I think, apart from one, over the last 30 years, has been with more than me. So when I was doing my PhD, I was publishing with my supervisors and with other people that I bumped into during the 3 or 4 years of doing my PhD. And then after that, I was always collaborating. Why is that? Is it, here's the choices. I want to see hands raised. Is it A, I'm actually not very good at research and need other people to carry me? Please be honest, those of you know, hands up. Thank you, Jacob. Yeah, thank you, Oshin. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to being your examiners for your PhD. Is it because I can't write? Maybe. What other reasons do you think? Those of you who are doing research and are starting to do research, why is it that I've never wanted to, I try to shy away from doing work which leads to outputs on my own? You enjoy making computer. Yeah, because the work we do is fun. Do it on your own, it's lonely and it's dull. And that's bad for your soul, but it's also bad for your research. Because if you think you're the best person to do your work, you're wrong. Because you need many steers and perspectives. Even when you start your PhD, or if you go on to do postdocs or end research in companies. There's a list of grants that I've had funded through UKRI. This one here is the only one where I was the sole investigator. And that's because it was called your first grant scheme. And I think it's similar now. You have to submit your grant on your own. Every single one of those, so for those who don't know, P means that you were the principal investigator, C means you were a co-investigator. So obviously, anyone that has a C, I was working collaboratively, but all of the others have involved multiple people, probably in different disciplines. You can see the discipline areas I've worked in at various stages of their career, okay? And I wouldn't want it any other way. My encouragement to you is you probably are already thinking this way. Whatever you do, don't do research, and we'll come to that word because I'm going to cross that out later as well. Don't do research on your own. Don't write grants on your own. You won't succeed, full stop. In the long term. You might in the short term. This lady here, Dame Ottilie Laser, is the Chief Executive of UKRI, which is the research funding body of the UK. It has £1 billion annually of budget. So they're the ones who funded all that work. And if you've got PhD scholarships, they're probably coming from UKRI. And this year, she made a real push to try and remind all of us in the research community, because it's not a widely held belief that you have to do research together. There is a belief that there are geniuses out there, and we should be funding geniuses, and we should be thinking about that lone scholar. Read that article, you can Google it later. It's really unhelpful because it's untrue. If you look through history, there have been a lot of, usually men, who've been spotlighted as amazing geniuses, where behind the scenes, literally because they were pushed behind the scenes, there were many more people, often women, who were doing that work. It is really important, whenever you do research, to acknowledge the fact that you are just one person. And however good people tell you you are, or however you feel you're good, have a bit of humility and remember all of the people that allow you to be like that. I sometimes forget that, and that is really bad. But we need to hold each other accountable, and that's a wide range of people. There's researchers, there are support staff, there are project officers. Without the whole team approach, A, it won't be done, and B, it won't be as diverse. So don't fall into the trap. And it's also relieving, right? If you're a researcher here, and many of you are in the room and on Zoom, it can feel a big burden. I have got to change the world. I've got to write a PhD, which has a substantial knowledge. You can feel yourself sinking into the sand. Let that go, because you are doing collaborative work, shaping ideas together. The kind of research I do also involves collaborations with non-formal researchers. So it involves people, in this case, Thomas and Jen will know this because they were leading the research and taking us to these places. These are colleagues in Dharavi in Mumbai. This is Shashank, who we worked with a long time. And these people here are co-researchers in my mind. They are looking at, in this case, a voice box that we put into that slum in India. And they're giving us their views, they're giving us their feedback. Their interaction is shaping the ideas. Now, some of you looking in the room, possibly, yeah, some of you in this room and some of you on Zoom might be thinking, well, that's fine for you, Matt and Jen and Thomas and Shashank. That's your research. You need people to shape your ideas. You need that human element. And here's Jen, I think, yeah, and Simon, who's standing up in the red t-shirt with others in Mumbai doing some more co-design, which led to a little robot that would print using salt, but that's another story which I'm sure Jen can tell you about in the future. You might be doing something like theoretical computer science, or a deep mathematical problem you're trying to address. So you might be thinking, I don't need the world to help me do research. What I need is a whiteboard and a marker pen and a bit of quiet, and I'll get on. That is correct. Of course you do. But I would encourage you, whatever research you're doing, is to get out there and engage with the world. Because we've been put in a very privileged position to do work which, I'll come to this in a moment, has to be in service of society. Even if you think that your work is completely abstract and nothing to do with society, well, think deeply about that, because I just don't buy that. I really believe that mathematical studies, computational studies, the broad thing is there to shape better futures for people like the ones that we've met during our very people-centric work. The other people that we need, and this is true, I think, of all researchers in computational disciplines, are stakeholders, companies, public sector, the NHS, charities, and big companies like Microsoft. So throughout my research journey, I have worked with all sorts of companies, just starting a new relationship, I hope, with Microsoft Africa Research Institute, and a colleague there called Jackie O'Neill, who heads that up. We really, really need people from those companies. Why is that? Thomas, why do you think that researchers, as researchers, we should be working with people like Marai or Facebook, or perhaps not Facebook anymore, I don't know, or Google?
Well, I think I'd paraphrase Ben Schneiderman here, who said very succinctly that businesses and various stakeholders, they simply have better problems and can sort of guide research or academic research sort of to those areas.
Perfect. It's almost as if you're a stooge, but you're not. So Ben Schneiderman was one of the founders of Human-Computer Interaction. He's been part of the community here, has visited us several times, and is on our international advisory board for one of our centers here. And he wrote a book called The New ABCs of Research, which you can see there, back in 2016. And his core principle in that book is that if you do fundamental research in the abstract and you add in an applied lens, you end up with better problems to address in the world and better solutions. Read the book and read papers around it. He's got evidence to show that in terms of the number of citations of papers, the impact that your work has. Again, it's a big trap. I mean, I come from a very experimental background, so it is very easy for me to preach this. Yeah, and I completely understand that if you come from a more theoretical or an abstract research field, you're kind of thinking, It's just added extra work. I appreciate it, but don't just dismiss it. Read things like Ben Schneiderman's work and then challenge yourself. Well, would it help? How would it help? What would be the cost? There are costs, of course there are. Making contact with stakeholders, asking them about their problems rather than being completely focused on your own curiosity takes extra time. But I am absolutely convinced that it is vital. So I'm going to give you a little case study now to just highlight a couple of those points. This is a bit of work that Thomas and Ava, Yvonne, and myself did. I think it was earlier this year. I've forgotten actually. Was it earlier this year? Yeah, it all blurred. And it was about addressing some of the issues from a human-computer interaction of COVID. I'm not going to go into much detail about the work, but I wanted to highlight right at the top there, you can see it wasn't me. It wasn't my research. There were 3 others, and we were in 2 different institutions, and we were all at different stages of career. Ava is starting a PhD. Thomas is a research officer or a postdoctoral senior research officer. How would you like to be called, Thomas?
Just Thomas.
Hey, Thomas. See, he's learned. I am here, and then Yvonne has just been awarded the Royal Society Milner Medal for substantial contributions to the field of computer science. So she is, you know, if she was going to, she would hate me saying it because she's also focused on the community. She's a superstar in terms of research and has done and seen everything. If you read this article and you go to the acknowledgements, you'll also see that we've acknowledged a company. So in that little bit of work we did at the start of this year, we had 2 institutions, different stages of careers, different disciplinary perspectives, and importantly, a company called Tharsis, who build the robots for Ocado. That's their main job, who had been thinking about a technology to help people distance themselves during COVID and beyond. Put your hand up in the room if you actually took part in a study for this work. Some of you did, you might not have known. Yeah, Ollie, you did. So this looks a bit of a shabby bit of research, doesn't it? So down in the Foundry, I know I can see laughs under masks, I really can. So these are not people. We ran a study where we asked people who are in the Foundry to come and to walk towards this handsome person here and stop within 2 meters as far as possible, and then towards this person, just to point out, I had to kind of dress them because all the things were falling off, and it was COVID. But we needed you, who helped us, including Ollie, to be participants in that research outcome. So you can see there, it's not my research at all. And we also had people in a company using the bump device. So you can see here that the 2 women are wearing a bump device. And the idea is very simply, if you get too close to somebody, it gives you some feedback. It gives you some analytics over the day, and it gives you some hints. So it's not meant to be invasive, it's meant to give you a nudge to think. And that was something that was important, you know, in the height of the pandemic. And of course, in this building, we're still practicing to some extent that social distancing. Okay, so our research, why it matters, instead of my research and why it matters. Next thing I have to do is get rid of that. I don't like that word either. Close your eyes, please. And I want you to immediately tell me what you see in your mind's eye, if you can. Some people can't. I learned that. My daughter, who's 18, Rosie, can't create an image in her mind's eye. So if you can't do that, don't worry, you just can't take part in this. So you've got your eyes closed. Research. What is the image that comes to your mind? Research. Right, open your eyes. Connor, what image popped up in your eyes? So conference like this, you know, in a room, there's a talk. Yeah, that's a very, very common activity. What about you, Heidi? Data. stuff. A little complicated, yeah, absolutely. And that will be important to many of yours. What about you, Oshin?
Trying stuff, like trying new approaches.
So trying stuff, experimentation. Those of you on Zoom, you can type it in perhaps. Thomas, what about you?
Lab coats.
Lab coats, yeah. Oshin, you've got one of those with your name on them, your white coat. Will, what you just started with this. When you closed your eyes and I said the word research, what came to your eye?
PDF of the research.
PDF of research paper, a very important artifact of research. Jen, what came to your mind? Research.
Oh, yeah. Traveling about and drinking wine with you.
Well, that sounds more fun, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, well, thank you, Jen. And this is being recorded. I'm not very good at giving detailed talks, so I went to Google and I typed in the word research, and here are the top images I got. You might get different ones because of your browsing histories, but these are the ones I got. Research or research.
I'm going to hate you.
Yeah.
You know that.
Or research. That's you, Thomas. Research assistant. On this one, they try to make it exciting by putting an exclamation mark. Research. Dull, 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 dull. That is not what you should have in your mind while you think of yourself as a researcher. One of my relatives from the Indiana family of Joneses would perhaps put it a different way. Clearly, they were, in all of their crusades, including the last one, were trying to really find something out. They were trying to discover something, and they took risks. So here's a question for your movie buffs. What is the risk that Harrison Ford is taking in this part of the movie? Yeah, so this is the one true grail. The grail is used at the Last Supper with Jesus and his disciples. And if you haven't watched the movie, behind Harrison Ford is a whole range of shiny chalices, and then a wooden chalice. And others pick up the shiny ones, the ones with jewels, the ones with gold. Harrison takes a big risk and picks up the wooden one. Be adventurous, be risky. And the other thing about this clip is to remind you to be humble. And that goes back to the first point about it being our research. Everybody else in this team took the gold, were attracted to the gems, were thinking about their own greed, and they died horribly. Whereas Harrison went for the wooden cup, and he lived to fight another day. His next movie, of course, is coming out. The last, perhaps the last Indiana Jones movie next year. So instead of research, use the word discovery. You are out there to be ambitious, adventurous, ride off in the sunset, fight some battles, find stuff out. Before I became a researcher, I started training to be a priest. But for reasons that anyone knows me will understand, that didn't work out. So I got told that that wasn't for me. One of the attractions about being a priest, apart from the dresses you could wear, is I was reading books about Victorian vicars in England in the 19th century. And they used to do things like this. They used to go and discover the world. And they used to put pins in them, literally, and collect as many things as they could, in this case, butterflies, and classify them. I was quite attracted to that. I like the idea of putting things in a box and having it all ordered and nice, and that's a nice world. If you only do discovery, then what you're creating is a lifeless, perhaps interesting, but a lifeless, closed off artifact. So I will encourage you all to go one step further. Go beyond discovery to innovation. You're going to find stuff out in your research, and you should then innovate to make the world different in some way. So going back to the COVID example, Thomas, hands up Thomas, people there, it was an online survey, 118 people, and we sent it out to find out, to discover what people's attitudes at that time, back in January, February this year, were towards social distancing. You can see the data there. You can reflect on whether or not where you put yourself in those categories. That was discovery, but the innovation, of course, was to understand then how Bump could design and develop their device given what is known about people's attitudes and towards distancing. And there's another picture of that device being used in practice. So throw away the word research, replace it with discovery and innovation. Got about 2 minutes left, I think. And I want to now get rid of that, the word matters. Matters doesn't, I can't see an excitement in the room there. Matters, why does it matter? There's no vibrancy I'm sensing either on Zoom or in the room. This is, well, Forbes is the guy who did the Forbes empire around the media empire, right? And he's quoting here, I told you I was going to be a vicar, right? So I'm going to get a bit of the Bible in. Other sacred texts are available. And in Proverbs, there's a very powerful verse that says, without a vision, people will perish. And Forbes is riffing off this, saying, well, what is your vision? What is pushing you in your life of discovery and innovation? I'm going to pause just for 30 seconds. I'm not going to ask anyone to reveal this, but when you reflect right now, what is it that you are pressing towards? What is your vision for your current stage of life? We're going to have a little bit of silent reflection, 30 seconds. Longer than you think, isn't it? If you haven't got one, it's not too late. But you need one. Otherwise, I promise you, you will perish. Doesn't mean you're going to curl up and die. I hope not anyway. But you'll lose so much of what is possible in your own individual achievement and fulfillment. For me, so then I would like to replace why it matters with vision and purpose. Our discovery and innovation, vision and purpose. For me, that is what motivates me. What does that image represent to you? Why did I choose that image? Question. Yeah. Life, good, yeah. Yeah. Perfect, making the world different and better, hopefully. And there's the word which is so important, at least for me, is hope. Yeah. Even before the pandemic, I was always driven by the fact that I'm a complete believer in many things, but in particular, in computational endeavor is all about creating new possibilities for people in the world. We are a mathematical science, we are a computational science, but we're primarily here to make the world better, and not simply for us. So be curious, go and immerse yourself in whatever area you're interested in, but hold yourself to that higher question. What's my vision? What's my purpose? And for me, it is bringing hope and possibilities. And of course, this isn't a normal time. We've just come through situation which is, you know, hopefully never experience it again in our lives, but has affected many people much more than we have been affected. Some of us on this call and possibly in this room have been deeply affected. But around the world, there's been huge issues. People need hope, and computational thinking, mathematical thinking can provide that. Jumping back to the social distancing example to tie this together, what was the vision and purpose? Thomas, you can put me right, but this is my take on it, right? I mean, obviously the purpose initially was to understand human behavior and inspire design. The longer term vision of that work is to perhaps wake up, realizing that there might be other times, other crises where we have to be distant. And there are across the planet times like that. There are times of civil war. There are times of natural disasters. Hopefully not any more pandemics, when people have to distance. And just like epidemiologists are, and virus researchers are thinking about the future, part of our vision in doing this work was to encourage thinking now to be better prepared for the future. So Zoom, for all its benefits, has helped us through the pandemic, but clearly it's not the best way of bringing us together when we couldn't be present socially. Jen, is leading a project which is just starting here with Gavin and Simon and myself, who will be looking at some of the other ways in which we might prepare and reflect on COVID in an interaction design way. This is the end. This is all you have to remember, right? So wake up. I would really encourage you to always work with others. I would really encourage you to be excited about what you're doing, seeing it as adventurous, ambitious, transformative. By the way, all of those words are there in grant proposal criteria. So if you want to get funding, not just from UKLI, they're going to want to know what your risk is in a positive. They want you to be risky. They want you to be like Indiana Jones or whoever you would like to associate yourself with, and really have that deep motivation. Doing the work we do is a great joy often. Sometimes it is miserable. You get stuck. I don't want to put you off, Will, if you started, or anyone else who's on the call. You get stuck. You feel like you're an imposter. You look at other people around you and think, how are they managing all that? You need to have a deep, deep drive that will get you through those times. Oh, I just wanted one caveat to all this stuff about be excited, adventure, risky is fun and all that. I am completely aware that, you know, possibly in this room and on Zoom, particularly because of the pandemic, there will be some of us who are not feeling that at all. Please don't be judged by that. There are times in everyone's lives where you do feel unmotivated, miserable, depressed. I've certainly felt that. The way through that is to go back to that very first word, my, and scribble it out and change it to our. Because by being a community here, or more widely, you will get through it. And with that, I think I'm going to stop. You can clap. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm just going to, oops, put on, let's put on the gallery view. Okay, so obviously, lots of things probably swirling in your head like, thank goodness that's over. Only 36 minutes of my life, and I have no jammy dodger. But are there any reflections that you'd like to make, or questions you'd like to pose, or challenges you'd like to present? What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the Zoom room first. And if anyone's got a hand up, perhaps Heidi can spot it, and then tell me. And then I'll look to this room, and then I'll do it again. And then we won't have any more questions like that. Right. So anyone in the Zoom, hello Zoom world. Any points you'd like to raise or questions or anything? You've got about 10 seconds to make it plain to me. So Maz, do you want to say something, please?
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much. That was really helpful talk, Matt. I'm just wondering about the research. When someone would like to start it and some idea coming in mind, sometimes this is really hard where to start when it is like really, raw topic in your mind, and you don't know if it is worth it really to, ask someone to look at it or think about it, or it's not really. So how you deal with it, how you start off with something.
So thank you for that. Really, really interesting question about, you've got an idea, tell me if I got you right, but you've got an idea, you think it's worth doing, but should you do it? How do you do it? Well, I think first of all, for me personally, I have to really feel that it is something I want to spend time doing. So I feel that there is an excitement there, there is an unknown there to discover, and there is an innovation. So that's the starting point. The second bit is then to go and talk to other people. And I talk directly to people. We work very closely with people in this room and elsewhere, and to see whether it is a good idea. But we can also talk to the literature. We can go and look at books and look at papers and have a conversation with those authors who have written, and to see if a real dialogue emerges. Most research, as you all know, Solmaz, you're not going for like the biggest prize to start with. We often prototype the ideas in research groups, or maybe when we're teaching, or in our reading groups, or in workshops and conferences, just to see whether or not there's a community there who wants to talk about what you're talking about. If you're the only one interested in an idea, and you're the only one who wants to speak about it, there are one or two possibilities. One, this is the most important idea ever the world is going to see, or you need to get a better idea. Because unless other people want to engage, you're basically sitting in a vacuum, and that is definitely no good for research. I hope that helps. Maybe it does.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was helpful.
Okay, now I'm going to turn to the room. Hello, room. Hello. Any challenges, provocations, or opposites, or questions?
There's a cheeky question on the chat from Thomas.
He's in the room. Thomas, would you like to read your question?
Sure. How do you feel about research that only quibbles over semantics? Is it a valuable contribution or a poor form of scholarly pedantry?
Okay, so what Thomas is saying is, I've made you all sit here for 39 minutes, taking a phrase and then pedantically taking each word out and discussing it with you. Yes?
Yeah.
And what was the question?
Is that a valuable contribution or just pedantry?
Absolutely pedantry. And the joy is that I've made you suffer it. It's a good question, though. We often get caught up, and of course this was completely intentional, get caught up sometimes on very fine nuances in the research. Back into the priestly thing, they used to have debates literally about how many angels would sit on the top of the pin. You can go down rabbit holes in research. A lot of metaphors are being mixed here to obfuscate and confuse you about Thomas's question. You can get stuck. Step back and ask that question. Is this a valuable contribution? Only you will know whether what we've all endured for the last 40 minutes has been valuable. And it will be valuable or not valuable to you in different ways, because we're all very diverse. Did that help?
It did.
Thank you. Right, one more to the Zoom room. Anyone else want to make a point, say something different, say what I was saying was not valuable? Because that's what we do in Discovery Innovation. We challenge each other, we test each other, we have hypotheses, and then we move on together. So I'm looking at the Zoom room. Last chance, going once, going twice. Yeah, most people aren't there. It's brilliant. Solmaz, I'm glad you're there. I don't like Zoom. I'm so glad soon it will go away. Last chance, gone. Bound to the room. Anyone else want to make a final point? Going once. Going twice. Heidi.
Can I just say thank you very much for actually opening up this question today, because I think the whole point of these talks is you can literally talk about anything, and you know what matters to you. I know you don't like the term
Exactly,
but however, my research is normally one person that will have the idea and start this off. Yes, it turns into a team and a group effort and a community and everything. But I think asking these questions and raising these things is really important, because other people will be sitting in a room on their own after months and months and months thinking, my research doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to think like that, because it's an important thing to be able to bring it to the floor, talk about it, and get things out there. So
brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And I'd just like to amplify that and say, Heidi asked me to start this off, and the joy of this slot is that there is no constraint. So I could have talked in detail about that COVID or in detail about Daravi, but I wanted to talk about this. So I'd encourage you in the room, but also you on Zoom. There is a series in its 4th year now, or 3rd year. Please volunteer. Heidi will also be gently and kindly asking you, don't worry what stage you're at. Don't worry if you've got a bit of research you want to talk about. Clearly, you do care, because you're here part of our community or the wider diaspora. So volunteer. As you can see, you just stand up and you talk nonsense, and people are very polite, and then they give you a very, very affirming round of applause. All right, thank you. We're going to stop recording now. Thank you all very much for joining us on the Zoom.